What up, how's it going, and welcome back for another video. In today's video, I'll be showing you how to play the 6 Skirmisher Comp and TFT Set 5.5. I'm filming this as of patch 11.17, which is finally where 6 Skirmishers feel like it has a good place in the meta, so that's why I decided to make a guide on this. So before we talk about anything on screen and anything going on and anything about the build, I just want to say that this is probably one of the easiest builds to play in the game, you know, along with like redeemed aliens. Definitely one of the easiest builds in the game to play. And whenever I get a Skirmisher opener and it looks like a good game to play Jax and good game to play that, I know I'm going to have a relaxing, nice game to play. So very beginner friendly comp, but it is a little bit hard to first place with if you want to play this variation. But I'll talk about some things you can do later on in the video in order to first place, especially once you start to get to a little bit higher elo trying to play this comp. All right, let's get into it. So your item start is going to be bow, glove, sword, belt in that order. Just all those items are going to be great for Jax, and then belt is the best defensive item in the game and is a very good win streak item if you want to play strongest board. So that's why belt is going to be there. You know, other than that, just like cloak is fine too. Cloak is actually pretty good. I didn't list it on there, but cloak's pretty good. Jax can use a lot of cloak items. So yeah, bow, glove, sword, belt, and cloak are all pretty good. After that, you know, whatever, you know. There's a lot of good places to put your items if you don't get those items, though. So don't freak out if you don't get one of those items. Okay, your opener is going to be built around skirmishers and sentinels. This is actually one of the strongest openers in the game. It has been the entire set. And so, yeah, essentially you'll just look for the units that I have placed on here. Senna doesn't have to be Senna. It can be whatever. It can be Pike. It can be Rakan. Rakan's probably the best, but Senna is usually what you're going to be able to 2-star. Pre-leveling in this comp is pretty good. Unless you don't have any of these 2-starred, then I wouldn't pre-level. So your early game plan, you're going to stack items on either Udyr or Olaf. So that's going to be your carry items, the items you want to play Jax. I just put an example of like an item that you can make early game, right? Like BT is good. Jax. We'll talk more about Jax items later. Cool. So you either stack Udyr or Olaf. If you stack Olaf, you'll usually have to remake him because he'll be one of your he'll be the skirmisher that you keep in your comp until you hit a Viego. So I usually like to put my items on Udyr if I can. But Olaf is great with the items. You can item stack Irelia, but I usually don't item stack Irelia because sometimes if you're going to slow roll, you have potential to 3-star Irelia. So I don't like to put items on her and have to remake her. It makes you lose your potential to 3-star, but you can definitely put it on Irelia if you know you don't want to look for 3 stars. But I usually don't know if I want to look for 3 stars until I get to mid game. So that's why I don't usually put items on her. Okay, so your leftover / tank items, you either put on Olaf, and remember if you put on Olaf, you will have to remake him because you do not want him to hold your tank items later on in the game. Or you can put on Irelia or Lee Sin. I usually put my leftover items on Lee Sin. I just prefer putting items on Lee Sin. He is one of the most valuable 3-stars in this build if you end up playing slow roll. But you can totally put on Irelia and just, you know, decide if you're going to hit Irelia or Lee Sin 3-star later. And you can just transition items over to who you 3-starred. Doesn't really matter that much, but I do prefer on Lee Sin because he's just a really insane unit, especially early game and mid game. Okay, so let's talk about your game plan, and then we'll switch over and talk about your mid game boards. So the game plan, whenever you're playing skirmishers, is just support your current build. This current build is what you want to build around. So support this build by grabbing skirmishers and just build the strongest build. Build your strongest board that you can at all times. You want to play kind of a strong early game, especially if you want to try to slow roll, because slow rolling involves having a lot of HP. But again, we'll talk about that when we get there. So you just want to make strongest board. You know, you can add units like Riven. You can add defensive traits in here. Just whatever is strongest at the moment, just play that while picking up skirmishers. If you do hit 6 skirmishers at any time, that is a really, really, really good spike. So that will be your strongest board most of the time, unless you have some really strong upgraded units instead of that. So as soon as you hit 6 skirmishers, you play 6 skirmishers. Okay, so the plan is to build strongest board because we want a fast 7, and we want to have 2 options when we get there. We're either going to play this comp as a tempo comp, or we're going to play it as a slow roll and play for 3 stars. Both of those you want to kind of have some high HP when you get there, but we'll talk more about that when we get there. Okay, you can roll at 6 to spike, especially if you're really close to 6 skirmishers, and you know maybe you're a little weak and you need to gain some HP. You can roll at 6. But in general, it is best to go to fast 7 if you are healthy enough to do that and you built a strong board. That's why we want to play a strong board, so we can get the level 7 healthy. We really want to get the level 7 because that is when we'll realistically hit Jax and Rel. Sometimes when you're rolling at 6, you have to make these tough decisions, and sometimes you have to transition your items off of Udyr already onto a Nidalee, and it just makes your build really weird and drops your potential for 3-starring and kills your econ a lot. So that's why we want to play strongest board early game to get to our level 7 so we can potentially hit Jax Rel, and we have that sliver chance of hitting Viego, so we can try that out as well. All right, let's look at an example of mid-game board. Okay, don't look at my items or anything like that yet. These are just examples. I will talk about like the win conditions for items on champions, and this is just an example of a slow roll build. You do not have to slow roll and look for 3 stars. We'll talk about it. Okay, so yeah, so don't look at my items yet. You want to get 6 skirmishers plus Rel ASAP. This is especially if you're going to plan to pivot this comp, but you want to get that ASAP if you're playing this as a tempo board, and we'll talk about how to do that. If you don't hit Rel, then Rakan and Nautilus are both good substitutes, as you can get Ironclad, or you can get Sentinel if you play Rakan. Very good substitutes until you hit Rel, but Rel is going to be good. Rel 1 is usually better than a Nautilus 2, but Rel 1 is not always better than a Rakan 2, so just think about that. But if Rakan's killing your econ, I'll usually swap him out for a Rel. Okay, so this is an example of a slow roll build, which basically means, if you don't know what slow roll means, it means you stay at 50 gold and you roll, and you just roll to 50 gold, right? You don't roll past 50 gold unless you're very close to a spike or very close to a 3-star. I only slow roll with these conditions in mind. If I have a large HP advantage, like I played a really strong early game, let's say I get to stage 4 with like 80 health, I have 50 gold, I'm really close to my comp, then that is an example of a time that you can slow roll, as well as if you're uncontested. If there's another player trying to play skirmishers as their mid game, then it's going to be a lot more difficult to hit your 3 stars. Or if you see there's like 2 players trying to play Aphelios and there's another skirmisher player, well, then it's unlikely you're going to hit your Lee Sin and stuff like that, which is one of the best 3 stars on this build. So that would be an example of a time if you're really contested or you're really low HP. You'd want to play this more as a tempo comp. But let's talk about if you're playing as a slow roll comp. And we'll talk about the tempo comp later when we talk about the late game comps. Okay, so if you're playing this as slow roll, you just don't roll past 50 gold, and you're looking for 3 stars, you're looking for your 2-star Jax. As soon as you hit a Jax 1, you'll sell your Udyr 2, or your Olaf 2, whoever you're carrying your items, and transition the items to a Jax 1. Occasionally, you'll have to transition items to Nidalee instead of Jax. That is when it looks like you're going to hit a Nidalee 3-star, and you're really far away from a Jax 2. Like, you're really contested. I had to do this yesterday. Cool. So usually when you're slow rolling, you won't all in until stage 5, until 5-1. Usually as long as you are healthy enough to make it there, you'll wait until then to all in. But again, if you are losing a lot and you already decided on this plan that you're going to play for 3 stars, sometimes you'll have to all in a little bit earlier just to survive, to get closer to your 3 stars. So just think about that. But usually if you're slow rolling, you don't want to all in until stage 5. Because you have that big health advantage, you can lose a lot on stage 4, so it's fine. Okay, and then obviously as soon as we hit Viego, we'll swap out for Olaf. One thing I do want to say before we talk about items and we move on and talk about late game, if you do want to play this as a tempo board, what tempo board means, if you don't know what that means, is that you are playing to spike early on in the game. So you're playing skirmishers specifically as a mid-game comp, and you're going to transition out of it later. You do this a lot. So just like I said, the conditions at which you would roll for 3 stars, if you don't meet those conditions, and let's say you're lower health, you may want to play this as a tempo comp. This is a very common strategy when you play skirmishers, which basically what that means is on 4-1, you roll gold until you have a strong board. And so usually what that means is you have six skirmishers, most of them upgraded at least a 2-star. You hit your Rel and you hit a Jax. And you play as a tempo comp. Hopefully you hit a Jax 2, but sometimes Jax 1 is just enough to win your mid game, especially if you're playing lower elo. So you just play to hit 2-star skirmishers, hopefully you 2-star Jax, and then you have a Rel, and then you play to get the level 8 to switch out your comp. And if you hit a 2-star Jax and you have a lot of health, you can play to get the 9 before you switch out your comp. So that is just how you will play the mid game there. So let's talk about some items. I told you I don't want to talk about the items until now. So this is very important. I say this in every single one of my guide videos. Don't think about best in slot. Best in slot is the biggest noob trap in the world. Best in slot just means what is the best items possible on your carry or on your champions. It is the biggest noob trap in the world. Rather than thinking of best in slot, you need to think about your carry conditions. What are the carry conditions for each of your champions, each of the potential carries in your build? And what I mean by carry conditions are, what do they actually need in order to do the desired effect, do the thing that you want them to do, right? The reason why best in slot is the biggest noob trap in the world, because people look for best in slot, and when they look for best in slot, they don't build items early, and they lose a ton of HP, and they bought 4, and they don't know why. So instead of thinking it that way, you need to think about what do they need. And so what does Jax need? Jax has a problem. Jax feels like he needs 5 items. Honestly, he feels like he needs 5 items, which is why Jax only ever fits really strongly in the meta whenever he has a really good spot, which right now he has a pretty good spot in skirmishers and stall comps. So he's actually in a pretty good spot. So let's talk about what he needs and what he can use really well. So he needs uptime. So he either needs RFC to keep him from getting CC'd by frontline, or he needs QSS. Both are fine. Build either one. It's great. Radiant versions of them are both great. It's all good. Okay. He also needs a way to kill frontline. Or he needs a way for his team to stall out a long time for frontline to die so he can scale up to kill backline. And so like Last Whisper and Giant Swear are very good items on him, both versions of the item. You don't always have to have Shred for the frontline, but again, you'll need a lot of stall or damage in other areas in order to get the frontline dead so that Jax can get to the backline, because Jax destroys backliners. But if you're playing against a 3 Ironclad player and you don't have a way to kill the front, and you don't have like Shred at all, you will get stuck on frontline and you'll die to like the Aphelios, the Vel'Koz players, stuff like that. So just keep in mind that Shred is very good. And then he needs healing. So BT and Hodge. So obviously skirmishers scale throughout the fight. It is a pseudo stall comp, especially once you have defensive traits in at level 8. It is a stall comp. So you need to, so having healing will benefit directly with your scaling in your stall comp. Cool. The other problem with this build, with the conditions I just gave it, and the reason why Jax feels like he needs 5 items, is this is kind of a low damage build. Since he has a single target carry, similar to Draven, but he doesn't deal near as much damage as Draven early on in the fight. Sometimes you need damage in other areas, like having Lee Sin, or you need more stall, like having Viego and Diana, or Kennen, Kennen with Morello. So you just think about having more damage in the rest of your comp, and we'll talk about what items you can put there. But if you don't meet these conditions, other good items to have in your build is like Runans. Runans can be a replacement for one of your shred items. This just gives you a lot of spread damage, a lot more damage. But again, you will have to think about how do you kill the frontliners. But this can be a lot more damage to your comp. And then like Warmogs is a great substitute, and Radiant Warmogs is a great substitute for BT. It's just a lot of survivability. Also, Radiant GA is pretty good on Jax, a lot of attack speed, and a way for him to survive. I should have put that on the uptime. So that's another good one for uptime is Radiant GA. Regular GA is not that great. Okay, so let's talk about some leftover items. Lee Sin, he can take your leftover rods, because you'll get if you get a lot of rods in this build, you can't use a lot. You can use 2. You can use 1 for Kennen, you can use 1 for Lee. You can use more for Lee if that's what you end up doing, but he can take your leftover rods and tank and aura items. Archangel is his best carry item if you end up going a 3-star route on him, or if you just have like leftover items. He's a good user of Archangel, so think about that. Kennen's best items are going to be Morello and Sojin. Those are very good on him. Nidalee, just Jax items. Whatever you wanted to build on Jax, that's fine with Nidalee. I have a Nidalee guide if you want to check it out, if you want to know more about playing Nidalee. But other than that, just Jax items. Or TG is very good on her. Irelia, I just use TG to signal that, whatever. Like you just put tank on her. After that, some of her better carry items, like if you end up 3-starring her and you have some leftover carry items, like Rageblade and Hodge are very good because she does have dual scaling. She deals AP and physical damage, so Hodge is very good. Giant Slayer is good, and Rageblade is very good because she lives for a long time. And then just after that, tank items. I usually itemize Lee instead of Irelia unless I 3-star her and don't 3-star my Lee Sin. So I prefer to put tank and like my second carry items onto my Lee Sin. I just like Lee Sin a lot. I think he's very good. And he's also very decent at killing frontline, which is something that Jax has trouble with. And so he can help kill frontline with AP, especially in your Ironclad matchups. He has AP, so he can help you kill the frontline. Okay, remember guys, this is an example of a slow roll build. Let's talk about late game. Don't look at my build just yet. I'll talk a lot about this. Don't think like I have to have each of these units. Just let me explain first. Okay, if you played mid game like you were slow rolling, and you're playing for 3 stars, you're just gonna ride out 6 skirmishers. So you actually don't make the board I have here. You just ride out 6 skirmishers. You swap out Olaf for Viego. And then the things you can add at level 8, it really just depends on what's happening in the game. You can add Diana, that gives you a lot of CC and a lot of stall. It also gives you Nightbringer for your Lee Sin. You can add Nautilus if there's a lot of physical damage left. That's just going to be really strong versus that, right? Or you can play around your emblems. So if you get a lot of emblems that game, just play around your emblems and build comps around that. And it's usually best to add defensive traits if you can. So let's say you get like a Mystic emblem, then you could potentially add some Mystics in there, right? You could even swap out your Rel if there's like just 2 Vel'Koz players left. You can swap out your Rel for a Gwen Fiddle and then have like a Lulu, or not a Lulu, but you'd have to do like Gwen Fiddle and then you have your Mystics back, right? That is if you're playing 6 Skirmishers, right? And so it's really easy. Don't play 3 Sentinels. 3 Sentinels are useless late game. The only time you'd play 3 Sentinels is 1, if you have an emblem, and then 2, if you need Akshan for shredding. So that's if you didn't build Shred on your Jax and you hit an Akshan and it gives you free Sentinel. That's a potential area where you could build it, but just make sure you position your Akshan in a way that he actually ults and he doesn't just instantly die. Okay, now this is an example of what I call a tempo pivot. So like we talked about earlier, you will play mid-game. If you played mid-game to spike and play to be strong, and this is usually when you have lower HP, or if you have a lot of HP and you had an easy spike on a roll down, then you can play to go to level 8 or you can fast 9. This all depends on how much HP you have and how much econ you have, whether you go to 8 and level 9. Just use your best judgment whenever you're playing. Okay, just a heads up, this will take some skill to pull off and may be difficult to beginner or new players. So if you're a beginner or new player, just, be advised that this is a little bit more difficult to do. But if you're an experienced player, you guys should know how to pivot already. So all that good stuff. Okay, so essentially what you need to be building, don't look at my units yet. You need to be building a high CC, high defensive comp with 3 skirmishers. This is if you're going to continue to play Jax as your carry. This board is just an example of a board built around defensive synergies. But remember, just build based off of what's left in the lobby. Like, we don't have to play these Mystics here, right? We don't have to play Lulu. We could be playing Nautilus. We don't have to play Volibear if we didn't hit it, but we'd love to play Volibear. Volibear is very, very, very strong. We don't have to play Volibear. We can play, Garen or Galio. We can play Knights and play around that. But essentially, just looking at this example board, let me just talk about like what it has. We have our skirmishers, right, for our scaling. Good backline CC right here. Good backline CC right here. Good frontline and backline CC. Frontline CC. Shred for our Lee Sin. Shred for our Diana. Our Viego also provides tankiness to your frontline based off our mist passive. Nice chip damage right here. Also gives a GA to your guy right here. And then Lulu is just a random mystic. If I didn't have QSS right here, the reason why I have Lulu positioned this way is for the enemy Viego jumping behind you. You'd want Viego to get stuck on the Lulu, or if Viego gets stuck on Jax or Diana gets stuck on Jax, then you have Lulu to CC them off of your Jax. So hopefully he can just walk to the front and kind of dodge the enemy Viegos and Dianas. That's why I have this set up. Okay, now if you do a full pivot, this is if you truly want to first place, you usually do a full pivot out of Jax and skirmishers. It's actually pretty easy to do. If you already know how to build a board that looks like this, it's pretty easy to do, so let's talk about it. So unless you're going to Jax 3, you'll usually transition out of him hyper late game, honestly. And so you can pivot out for 2 things. And it's really easy. Looking at this example board, obviously remember, you build your board based off of what's happening in your lobby. But if you had a board that looks exactly like this, then all you would do is take out Lee Sin and Jax, and you would add Akshan and Aphelios. And you'd carry either Akshan or Aphelios, hopefully Akshan, right? Or you swap out for Draven and Kayle, and you just carry Draven and Kayle with a similar board. You get Forgotten, all that good stuff. If you do Aphelios, you get Nightbringer right here, right? So easy synergies right there. And again, you don't need Sentinel late game. It's pretty useless, so don't worry about Akshan having Sentinel. And then obviously, if you play Draven and Kayle, you would not play Lulu. You would play Lux, and then you would have Draven and Kayle back here, and that would give you Redeemed as well. So just some really clean synergies. All right, that is it. I feel like I covered a lot. How long was this video? Video is 20 minutes. That's not that bad. Usually my guides are a little bit longer, but again, skirmishers are one of the easiest builds to play. And whenever I get skirmishers, I know I have a nice, relaxing game. This is one of the very few boring builds I actually like playing. I hate playing boring builds. I hate playing aliens, man. I think they're so boring and lame. And honestly, like, I don't mind playing Redeemed. It's fine, but I like playing Varus, but I don't know, Redeemed's pretty boring to me, but I actually really like playing skirmishers. I think it has a lot of outs, has a lot of flexibility, and you can think about doing like a full board pivot, which is fun to do to me. So anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to like it. It helps me out on YouTube. And if you made it this far in the video, I always appreciate when people write a comment saying that they listen to me talk about the game. for 20 minutes. So I always appreciate that. And I read every comment and I try to respond to all of them, especially if they're positive. I'll respond to all the comments. Usually I don't respond to negative comments, just don't want to fuel that fire. You feel me? But I usually don't get too many. So if you made it this far in the video, I would appreciate a like and a comment if you wanted to do that to help me out. If not, I do just like reading it. And if you don't want to do that, that's all good. But, you know, might as well plug it. All right. The only thing else I have is, like, you know, I stream all the time. And yeah, I love making these guides. And, you know, more guides to come. I want to make some stall comp guides. This is kind of a stall comp, but I want to make a Jax stall comp, Draven and KO stall comp. I love playing stall comps, and they're actually kind of in right now. They're kind of the new flavor, you know. They're coming in right now, and I love playing those builds. So, anyways, if you guys like this, please let me know, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Have a good day, have a good night, and wherever you are, hope you're doing well. All right, see ya. Bye bye.